Your knee healed 15 years ago. The x-rays are clean. The tissue has regenerated. The scar is barely visible. By every medical measure, that injury no longer exists. And yet, last Tuesday, when the weather changed, when the barometric pressure dropped 12 millibars in 6 hours, your knee started aching. Not a little. Enough to make you limp. Enough to make you reach for ibuprofen. Enough to make you wonder if you somehow re-injured it in your sleep. You didn't. The injury is gone. The pain is real. And the explanation for this apparent contradiction is one of the most unsettling discoveries in modern neuroscience. Your nervous system remembers the injury. It learned pain. And, like any good student, it refuses to forget what it learned, even when the lesson is no longer relevant. This is not metaphor. This is not psychology. This is measurable physical, structural change in your neurons. And once you understand how it works, you will never think about pain the same way again. Here is why this matters beyond idle curiosity. Approximately 50 million Americans live with chronic pain. Many of them have injuries that healed years ago. They bounce between doctors who find nothing wrong. They are told the pain is in their head. They are given medications that barely work. They feel gaslit by their own bodies. The pain is not in their head. It is in their spinal cord. It is in their brain. It is in the very architecture of their nervous system. And understanding this mechanism is the first step toward actually fixing it. Let me start with what most people believe about pain. It seems obvious. You cut your finger. Nerves in your finger detect damage. They send a signal up your arm, through your spinal cord, into your brain. Your brain receives a signal and produces the experience of pain. Simple input-output. Damage in, pain out. This is called the specificity theory of pain. It dominated medicine for over 300 years. It is elegant. It is intuitive. It is also completely wrong. Here is the first crack in that theory. Soldiers in battle sometimes suffer catastrophic injuries, shattered limbs, exposed bone, and report feeling nothing. No pain at all. They walk off the battlefield, look down, and are surprised to find their leg is destroyed. Meanwhile, people with no injury whatsoever experience excruciating pain. Phantom limb syndrome. A person's arm has been amputated. The arm does not exist. And yet they feel their missing fingers burning, cramping, clenching into a fist they cannot open. How can you feel pain in a body part that is not there? The specificity theory cannot answer this. If pain were simply a report of tissue damage, phantom limb pain would be impossible. No tissue, no damage, no signal, no pain. And yet the pain is absolutely real. It is not imagined. It is not exaggerated. Brain scans show the pain centers lighting up like a Christmas tree. Something else is going on. For most of medical history, doctors who could not find tissue damage assumed the patient was lying, hysterical, or seeking drugs. This is not ancient history. This was standard practice into the 1990s. Chronic pain patients were routinely dismissed. The breakthrough came from a Canadian psychologist named Ronald Melsack. In 1965, working with British neuroscientist Patrick Wall, Melsack proposed something radical. They called it the gate control theory of pain. Their idea was this. Pain signals do not travel directly from injury to brain. They pass through gates in the spinal cord. These gates can be opened or closed by signals coming down from the brain. The brain does not passively receive pain. It actively modulates it, turns it up, turns it down, sometimes blocks it entirely, sometimes amplifies it beyond reason. This was revolutionary. For the first time, science acknowledged that pain was not a simple readout of damage. It was a conversation between body and brain, and the brain had editorial control. But Melsack was not finished. In 1990, he proposed something even more radical, the neuromatrix theory. He argued that pain is not detected, pain is constructed. Your brain contains a network, a matrix that generates the experience of your body. This matrix can produce pain entirely on its own, with no input from the body at all. The pain is not coming from your knee. The pain is being generated by a pattern of neural activity in your brain that represents your knee. The knee itself is almost irrelevant. This sounds like semantics. It is not. It changes everything about how we treat pain, and it explains why your old injury hurts when it rains. Let me tell you what actually happens when you injure yourself. And I mean what happens at the cellular level, because the details are where the horror lives. You twist your ankle, tissue is damaged, cells rupture, they release chemicals, inflammatory molecules like prostaglandins, bradykinin, substance P. These chemicals do two things. They promote healing, and they sensitize the nerve endings in the area. Sensitization means the nerves become more excitable. Stimuli that would normally be ignored now trigger pain signals. Touch hurts. Warmth hurts. Movement hurts. This is called peripheral sensitization, and it is completely normal. It protects the injured area while it heals. Here is where things go wrong. If the injury is severe enough or lasts long enough, or if you are unlucky enough, the sensitization spreads. It moves from the peripheral nerves into the spinal cord itself. Your spinal cord contains relay neurons that pass signals up to the brain. These neurons start to change. They grow more receptors for pain signals. They become easier to activate. They start firing in response to signals that should not trigger them at all. Light touch, gentle pressure. Even normal body sensations get interpreted as pain, and this is called central sensitization. And here is the critical part. Central sensitization can persist long after the original injury has healed. The wound closes, the inflammation resolves, the tissue regenerates, but the spinal cord neurons remain hypersensitive. They have learned to produce pain, and they keep producing it even when there is nothing wrong. Let that sink in. The neurons have physically changed. They have grown new connections. They have altered their receptor density. They have modified their threshold for firing. This is not imagination. This is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience. The same mechanism that lets you learn piano also lets your spinal cord learn chronic pain. But we are not done. The changes extend beyond the spinal cord into the brain itself. Brain imaging studies of chronic pain patients show measurable differences. The prefrontal cortex, which normally inhibits pain signals, becomes less active. The areas associated with emotional suffering become more active. The brain literally reorganizes itself around the pain. New connections form. Old connections strengthen. Pain becomes embedded in the architecture of the brain, and now I can answer your original question. Why does your old knee injury hurt when the weather changes? Your nervous system learned that knee position. It built a detailed model of what signals to expect from that joint. After the injury, it learned that certain patterns of input meant danger. Cold, pressure, unusual loading, these became associated with pain. The association was encoded in your spinal cord and brain. When the barometric pressure drops, the tissues in your knee expand slightly. Gas dissolved in the joint fluid forms tiny bubbles. The pressure on nerve endings changes subtly. These signals are minor. In a normal knee, they would be ignored. But your nervous system is still listening for trouble in that knee. It has been listening for 15 years. It detects the subtle change and interprets it through the lens of the old injury. The pattern matches. The gates open. Pain is generated. The knee is fine. The nervous system is remembering. This might sound theoretical. It is not. We have direct evidence. In 2013, researchers at McGill University studied patients with chronic back pain over the course of 1 year. They took brain scans at the beginning and end of the study. Patients whose pain persisted showed measurable changes in brain structure. Gray matter density shifted. Connectivity between regions increased. The longer the pain lasted, the more the brain reorganized. More striking is the phantom limb research. Vilayanur Ramachandran, a neuroscientist at UC San Diego, showed that the brain's body map reorganizes after amputation. The area that once represented the missing hand gets invaded by neighboring regions. Touch the face, feel the phantom hand. The map is corrupted, and the corruption produces pain. Ramachandran invented a treatment that sounds absurd and works anyway. Mirror therapy. You place a mirror beside the intact limb, positioning it so the reflection looks like the missing limb. The patient moves both limbs, watching the mirror. The brain sees two limbs moving. The phantom, which had been clenched in a painful fist, suddenly relaxes. The brain updated its model. The pain stopped. No drugs, no surgery, just a visual illusion that rewrote the neuromatrix. This proves something profound. If you can turn off phantom pain with a mirror, the pain was never in the limb. It was always in the brain's representation of the limb. The map is not the territory. But for your nervous system, the map is the only thing that exists. Here is what I want you to carry with you. Pain is not a sensation. Pain is a decision. Your nervous system collects information from your body, cross-references it with memories and expectations, evaluates the context, and decides whether to generate the experience of pain. Tissue damage is one input among many. It is not always the deciding factor. Sometimes there is damage and no pain. Sometimes there is pain and no damage. Your old injuries hurt because your nervous system still believes they are dangerous. The neurons that learned to fire together during the injury still fire together now. The pattern is encoded. The memory persists. This is frustrating if you are living with chronic pain, but it is also hopeful, because neuroplasticity works both ways. The same mechanisms that encode pain can unlearn it. Mirror therapy works. Graded exposure works. Certain forms of physical therapy specifically designed to retrain the nervous system work. The pain is real, but it is not inevitable, and it is not a life sentence. Your nervous system is not betraying you. It is doing exactly what it evolved to do, learning from experience and protecting you from threats. The problem is that it learned too well. It is still fighting a battle that ended years ago. Understanding this is the first step. Your body healed. Now your brain needs to learn that it is safe, and that learning is possible. The next time your old knee aches when the weather changes, you can remind yourself of what is actually happening. Not new damage, not failure to heal, just a memory, encoded in neurons, triggered by a pattern, producing an experience that feels like the past but exists only in the present. Your nervous system remembers more than you think. The question is whether you can teach it to forget.